I'm Vibhuti Jha, your long lost friend. I'm returning back to doing what I always do with you, sharing my thoughts and on issues, topics that are relevant to you. It has been a long time. The last time I was talking with you was just before going to Jaipur Dialogue annual event, and it has been that long. But be that as it may, we always start the innings afresh. So today we are wanting to talk about the indomitable, unpredictable leadership of Donald Trump and the way things are going on right now around him, around the country, around the world. What we are witnessing is Trump needs to help Trump himself. So I'm talking to our guest today, Mr. Mohan Sonti. Can Trump help Trump, or will Trump end up trumping himself? That's important. His name is also very unique. So, why do I say that? Just to give you a tiny background to that Mr. Trump is trying to do so many things on so many fronts at the same time, using a style and choice of words that makes people wonder what in heavens is going on. And this is what you have to understand. I'll give you the background. I came to this country in 1991. And since then, Bill Clinton and George Bush Sr., I have heard them talk about fixing Washington swamp, comprehensive immigration reform, war on drugs, war on child sex and pornography and abuse of women, illegal arms sales around the world, and then after 9/11, war on terror. What a pity. It is 2025 and America hasn't solved its problems. So, what are we thinking about it? Is America incapable of not solving the problems? Or America is just not interested in solving the problem, and there drops in Donald Trump, the CEO of Trump Inc. He says, I will fix the problems. And he goes about it in an absolute Rambo style, or call it any which way you want. But he has also shocked his people, supporters, me included. I supported Mr. Trump 2016 onwards. Even I'm little saying, why can't you do it better? On immigration reform itself, what Mr. Clinton said in the State of the Union, which is public record, and what Barack Obama, the other Democrat president, said many times about illegal immigration, people waiting in queue, the crime and taking away of the jobs and everything else. Trump is doing exactly that. But he draws a scorn and a hate. But Clinton and Obama remain the darling of the people or the media. Why so? Talk about this matter because it's important. America is an important country in the world today, and it definitely, makes people think again. And Mohanji and I will talk about and will give some reasoning what in heavens is going on. Mohanji, your thoughts.
So, namaste, all the viewers. Very happy to be back in Jaipur Dialogues again. So, just
This is
regard
Jaipur Dialogue USA, by the way.
Jaipur Dialogues USA. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So, regarding one of the points that you mentioned about all the subsequent political parties trying to say that they will clean the swamp and do a bunch of things, right? Many a times I see in many of the democracies, I worry when the political parties say that they want to clean up something and fix something, because when they finish doing the job, it's like a conflict of interest. If they finish it, then nobody is going to vote on that issue anymore. So somehow I see this as a pattern in many democracies that when the government says, I'm going to do this specific task, and they highlight it and people vote for it, there is a good chance that they won't solve it. In fact, in Bharat, we have the same thing about Garibi Hatao, right? From Nehru, and then it started with Indira Gandhi, and even today Rahul Gandhi says this. I mean, they continue with the same thing. It's because there's a conflict of interest. If they got the votes because of trying to solve a problem, why solve it when they can keep getting the votes? I'm just saying that is just to think about.
No, you are absolutely right. And the important, the two examples, Garibi Hatao, my favorite example, They did not want to solve Garibi Hatao. They removed the poverty of their own party loyalists, but
Yes.
not the people of India. And the second was Lalu Yadav. This is a live actual story. Lalu Yadav ji used to complain about center neglecting Bihar's plight. Okay? And a friend of mine, who was the managing director of NABARD at that time, he was tasked by the Ministry of Finance to go and give him money and shut him up. So this friend of mine, who was a very principled guy, went to Bihar and he told Laluji, we'll give you 4,000 crores. Laluji was mighty happy that this money will come. Hamara general account mein credit kar dijiye and all that stuff. And this guy said, no, bring projects and I will fund the projects, not a general account. And that's the time Lalu Yadav told him that you are a bank karmachari. You are a bank ka naukar, karmachari, adhikari. You don't know politics. And he said, my constituents vote for me only because they remain poor. If they became rich, why would they vote for me? Something
Exactly.
exactly, a longish example to what you said. There is a vested interest. Tell us more about it.
Right. The
Can
USA has the
Mr.
same
Trump
thing.
can Mr.
Yeah.
Trump himself, or is he's the only person who can help himself? Nobody can help him
Yeah.
unless you give him a $400 million worth of a plane as a gift.
So in USA, Trump has a lot of unique qualities here. Is the one of them is that he is only the second president without a political background, and he's the first president in the history of America to not have any experience with the government at all. Right, the first one is actually Eisenhower. He was a general, and he became the president. And Trump is the second president without any solid political background. And the second thing is, we know that today America has about 45% independence. So there are problems, and currently we know that the Republican and Democratic Party, the two-party system that we have in USA, they cannot sit at the same table. They cannot talk to each other. In fact, many of them have the elements of what I call as the flat earthers, wherein if one person says the earth is flat, the entire team will agree to it. So that is how currently the things are. So Trump to me is not exactly a Republican. He is kind of like an independent because initially he was in the Democratic Party, if you remember, and then he moved to
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
So he is the only outsider to this entire system. So if anybody can fix it, there is a hope for Trump to fix it. And I think we talked about it in the past, all the way going back to 2016, that that is the only chance. Otherwise, things are going to be in the status quo. Nobody is going to change anything. Now, can he really do it and deliver? He is battling the entire ecosystem. And I would say not just the Democrats. I feel he is also battling a substantial portion of the Republicans as well. So whether he can do it or not is something that's to be seen. There is an issue with the optics. There is an issue with all the political parties that, I mean, Democrats are very clearly against him. There's a portion of Republicans too, if you have seen in first term, who do things behind his back. So I'm not too sure if he can actually accomplish it. That's going to be a very tall order. But we hope he can make some of the changes. But if he doesn't, it's not going to be good because I don't think anybody else is going to. It's going to be a continuation of what we had for the last several decades.
So what you're saying is that if Trump can't fix, America will have to live with his disasters, right?
It'll be a slow slide, like it
Yeah,
was
it
in the
will.
last 20
So
years.
that's right. Now, here is things like this. As the saying goes, I have heard once a very prominent CEO of a company tell us here in a investment managers seminar. He said that politicians are not stupid. They from time to time they do act stupid because they want to gauge to which extent people will respond or what their reactions would be. So this is how they do their own personal mental polling. If I said something, what was the impact of it? If it does well, they push the agenda a bit more. My concern here is very simple. I want to take you to comment upon specific issues and how it is being handled. And I'll take the example of the recent happenings in Minneapolis, where we heard two things. One was massive uh, fraud, billions of dollars worth of fraud done in the name of elder care, Medicare, child care, and whatever else is there. And that was tracing it back to the governor, Tim Walz, who was a former vice president's candidate. The fraud, which was huge. I mean, Ilhan Omar, I hate to name that lady, but there is a winery that doesn't exist or just disappeared, and millions of dollars were made. And then there was the Trump trying to take out criminal murderers, rapists, killers, criminal elements of the illegal immigration that happened. Two people were killed by the ICE, and the whole optics went awry. Now, suddenly, all these criminals and the fraudulent people who did their frauds are victims, and Trump is the evil. Important point I also want you to comment upon. Same Tom Homan, who is the DHS head and immigration ICE head and everything else, in Barack Obama's regime, he deported many more people than Trump. And
Yes.
Barack Obama honored him in the White House with the medal. He is a villain doing the same job. Tell us something on that.
So we'll try to understand the nuances of how each of these things have unfolded, right? So you're right about the Barack Obama time. He is in fact called the deporter in chief, if you remember.
Yeah.
If you look at the statistics and records, the deportations during the Obama's time is the highest. But we have to be very careful with that kind of numbers, is because how can he deport so many people if they haven't let them in the first place? I'm just saying. During Trump time, the deportations, the first term is not that high. But again, not many people got in either. So I'm saying some of these statistics can be self-serving. But the fact also remains that if deportation itself is a problem, then Obama actually has the deporter in chief moniker, and he has deported the most number. I think it's around 3.5 million to 4,
Yes. Yes.
right? Now, said that, we have talked about Minnesota. Let us take that the two examples, right? One is about the daycare, the fraud that has been happening, and the second one is about the ICE agents. So let's understand each one and see what is really happening there. So the law actually, see, for all the daycares, it comes under the health secretary. So they distribute the funds to various states depending on their needs. And that is how all the states, then they have to account for it on where have they spent that money. Now, there is a very huge leeway for that. And that leeway is 10%. So the errors can be 10%, which I think for any accounting and many other places, you can be sure that 10% is pretty generous amount of errors, right? So what happened in Minnesota is and everything has to be audited. So what happened in Minnesota is when all these funds were given to the state, there was an audit, and out of I think 1,500 different daycares that's been funded with this, somewhere around that number, they found that more than 10% of them actually have errors, auditing errors. So what are those errors? There are payments that are made for people who don't exist. There are payments that are taken for things that have not been done. And there are payments that are made in excess of what needs to be normally paid. Like in certain cases, the children were not there, but still the accounting showed that the children were there and there were payments made to that daycare. So all of that is frauds, right? Now, there is certain leeway. So there are clearly a lot of fraud that has happened. But in terms of the accounting error itself, it exceeded 10%. Now, there are 4 or 5 states that have definitely exceeded that. Now, for any system in any country, if the auditing fails, then obviously there's going to be a supervision. Somebody is going to come in and check in more in detail, right? I would say opposing that is fundamentally wrong. Don't you think? I
Yeah.
mean, if even for the companies, right? If everybody audits their records and everything, and if you find errors, even for the taxation, there is always a leeway. In this case, that leeway officially is 10%. The rule says that the federal government will step in if the errors are more than 10%. And in case of Minnesota, it was. It turns out that is true for 4 or 5 other states as well, like California, New York, Colorado, Washington, and Illinois, I think. Yeah, Illinois is one of them, because Illinois and California it's a special case when it comes to breaking these laws. And all of them are Democratic Party states. All right, just to be noted. And I don't think it is just a coincidence.
Just for the viewers' clarification, I'm a Republican, full disclosure,
I'm an
Mohanji is an
independent.
independent.
I'm an
Mohanji is an
independent.
independent. That's what is important to bear in mind. Okay, go
So
ahead.
I don't take any sides. If something is wrong on the Democratic or Republican side, I've done that in the past as well. What
Right.
is wrong, and what is good is good. But in this case, this fraud of over 10% has happened in at least 5 states. So obviously, federal government has to come and take a look at it and check the records. I think that is true for even the corporates, taxes, or anything else, right? An audit fails, somebody is going to come and take a look at it. So what Minnesota is doing currently, if you see, they're actually blocking this and made it into a huge issue, as if what the federal government the government is doing is actually forcing themselves onto the state government, which is not true. So I think Trump, for whatever reason currently, I mean, because we know the media and everything is obviously biased, definitely is failing at the optics. But if you look at the ground realities and what happened, all that Minnesota has to do is say that in this 1,500 daycare, the locations, I think the total amount of money that is given is about 2 billion or so,
Yeah.
and 2 to 2.5 billion, of which there was a auditing error of over 250 million. All right, that exceeds 10%. So I think it makes sense for the federal government to step in and say, hey, what happened? Show me the numbers. Where did you pay and what did you pay? The way I see it is, it's only when there is a true fraud is when I would say the thief is the one who will say, no, you cannot check it. In fact, to me, that is like a red flag. If somebody says, if a police officer stops you and says, hey, I want to check this, and you have nothing else to hide, then just show it, be done with it, right? It's a very smooth, simple process. You cannot hold your fist tight and say there's nothing inside it. Just open the fist and show it. And what happened? So to me, that is a red flag on what Minnesota is doing. And Ilan Omar, she's from as I recollect, she's from the 5th district. And in that entire area, to my knowledge, in the historically for the last several decades, since I think 1970s or something, the margin has been almost 20% to 70% favoring Democrats. All right.
Yeah.
So there is a narrative that they're trying to push as if the Republicans are coming after Democrats. That is not true. There are so many other Democratic states. But these 5 states, when they fail the audit, I think the right thing to do is let the federal government step in, take care of the books. If there are issues, it will come out. But they are actively blocking it. So I think when somebody says don't come in, I think that is a red flag. So that is the real issue. So I don't think it is a problem with the federal government. This is a very serious problem with the state government. And especially when somebody says, I'm not going to let them in and I'm not going to let them audit the whole thing, to me, it sounds like somebody is breaking the law. Because if all the records are clean, would you tell me if the records are clean, would anyone hide it?
Yeah, that's very true. I would not. And if
Yes.
I'm a sample survey of my own self, I would say 100% people will say I don't mind checking it out if
So
something
why
there
would
is
anyone stop
wrong.
it? Who would
Yeah.
stop it? Who would
Who
say do
po-
not check?
exactly. Here is a very important point
Yeah,
again.
we have to cover the other part, the ICE
Which
one as well,
okay, yeah, yeah, sure.
in the Minnesota. So let us try to understand further any kind of law enforcement agencies. They have a very tough job, right? Because they work exactly at the border of the human rights and the criminals. So it's a very delicate job that they have to maintain. Now, what they have is, it is inherently a very tough job, but I think it makes it more difficult because of two kinds of people. The first difficult job is about the criminals who may or may not understand the law, but they completely discard the law and do criminal activities. And it is very dangerous to deal with them in the first place. And the law enforcement does a very tough job and how to contain these criminals so that the whole society can be safe. The second group of people, which makes it the real tough job for whether it is ICE or any law enforcement, is that these people are really very good at heart. And first, let me tell you what happened to Rene Good and what happened to Alex Pretty. I really feel sad about it because as
Sure.
civilians, that should not have happened. And that is wrong, definitely wrong, because as civilians, they have not committed anything wrong. And if anything, they were really compassionate about humanity and they were taking care of people. So I sympathize with them. But said that, the problem is many of them who are genuinely good at heart also fail to differentiate between what is legal and illegal. This is where the law enforcement agency has the toughest job. So it's tough already because of dealing with criminals who do not give a damn about the laws. It just makes it difficult when people with really nice heart and really humane and they really care for the humanity. But if they too fail to differentiate between what is legal and illegal, then it does become very difficult for the law enforcement to take any actions, because they're already working on exactly the border of the human rights and the criminals, right? I think what happened in Minnesota is basically that we have to educate people. Unfortunately, what happens in these cases is the political parties. My concern is the opposition party is supposed to have the role of being the checks and balances so that the ruling party behaves well, but very often they end up being the enemies within the state itself. Somehow they tend to act that. This happens in many democracies, not just in USA and Bharat or anywhere. My concern is these very nice, good-hearted people, when they start, infringing on the actions by the law enforcement and somehow do not differentiate legal versus illegal, that makes it very difficult for the law enforcement people. They need to be educated, and the opposition, I hope, did not take political advantage of it for the brinkmanship shown by these nice people. I would say don't show the brinkmanship. If the law enforcement agencies are doing anything wrong that is illegal, that should not have been done, by all means go after them. And we should, because that is the checks and balances. But stopping them from doing something that is actually, they're trying to catch people who are doing illegal things. Illegal immigration is illegal. Do not use any other words. In fact, I think it's fundamentally wrong to use the words like dreamers and charmers and lovers. And no, it is illegal. All right. So I think somebody should bear that responsibility of giving these kind of words.
You said it. You said it very correctly, and I also wanted to. We live in America. It's a great country, but a totally confused country as of now, because as you rightly said, when you try to protect, and this is what my anger is about, is that those people who are trying to protect the criminal elements of the society, you don't see them. I don't see the woke people going on the street to protest against illegals raping, killing, murdering children and women in the parks and shops and looting shops because there is a law which allows you to rob up to $900, from a shop. And it's rampant. There was a news, I saw the video, in Los Angeles street, two people broke open into jewelry shop and robbed the jewelry and went away. And where the inside, the jeweler is trying to protect his. These are the kind of lawlessness which is angering people. My question here is,
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to say. This
yeah,
is an issue I have with the Democratic side is they're
yeah,
giving this impression, right? Because of their actions,
yeah,
the immigration laws are not suggestions to the country that one may want to follow depending on their comfort and
it
convenience.
is this,
These are the laws of the land,
yeah,
and protecting illegal immigrants who have broken the law is not a good Samaritan act.
right,
It is becoming an accomplice in the crime.
correct,
I'm
absolutely.
saying these nice-hearted people, they need to be focused on the right things. And unfortunately, the confusion starts from using the wrong words, such as dreamers and charmers and lovers.
Oh yeah, but
I'm
wait, wait,
saying
wait, wait.
illegal immigrant.
I
I mean,
want to add here for your benefit. That the famous word that Governor Newsom, Kathy Hochul, and Tim Walz and all the Democrats use: sanctuary city and sanctuary state. What sanctuary? Tell us something about that. It beats the hell out of me. That how can you protect the criminals and lawbreakers and call yourself a sanctuary? Tell me more. I'm baffled. I do not know. Your thoughts on that?
yes. So let us try to understand the idea of the sanctuary city, right? And what is the gray area there? The legality, illegal. I know there is a whole debate on is it illegal or is it legal, but let's try to understand how these sanctuary cities are formed, so the viewers can understand what is really happening from the legal standpoint. There is something called 10th Amendment. What 10th Amendment says is the separation of powers between the state and the federal. All right. They basically say that the federal government cannot interfere in the affairs of the state, something to that effect. So this has two fundamental principles. It is called the anti-commandeering doctrine, and it has something called resource sovereignty. What it means is the federal government cannot go to a state and it cannot command things on what they should do. And number two, it cannot take away the resources. It cannot force the state government to use its resources for the federal work. All right, that sounds clear enough because it's a 10th Amendment, the separation of the powers. Now imagine what happens in Sanctuary City, which is basically all the illegal immigrants who are living in those places, right? So what the state government does is, if I can personify it, imagine the federal law is running after an illegal immigrant, which comes under the federal purview. All the immigration issues are federal, right? So they're running after them. Imagine there's a state law as a person standing there, and the federal law says, hey, catch him. And the state law says, not my job. I'm not going to. Now the federal government says, so this is the issue that is happening. So all the illegal immigrants sitting there, the federal ICE and other agents says, hey, you have illegal immigrants. And the state law says, not my job. I'm not going to catch them. I don't have to. I don't have to, right? Legally, they don't have to. Now the federal government says, all right. And this criminal is running right past the state government, state law. But he says, it's not my job because that comes under the federal purview. Now imagine the federal government says, the federal law says, hey, then step aside. Let me go and catch him. The state law says, I don't have to move aside either. I don't have to cooperate. I don't have to. Legally, you can say, as per 10th Amendment, I don't have to cooperate. Then the federal law says, okay, can you at least help me? Can I borrow your tool so I can catch him? I can handcuff him. You can take care of him. They says, no, you cannot use any of my resources. You cannot use my car, my bicycle. No, you cannot do that. Now the legality is, now the federal government says, is that blocking the law from taking its course? The state government says it isn't, because as per the 10th Amendment, I have the right to stand in the middle of the way and do nothing about it. And they do have the right. He says, can you step aside? I don't have to. Can I help? Can you help me with this? I don't have to. So the argument in court is, this is per the 10th Amendment, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to cooperate. It's like the non-cooperation movement, right? The federal government's perspective is that not cooperating and letting the criminal go away is also inhibiting the law. So this is where the people who argue whether sanctuary cities is legal or illegal, the issue is, depending on which view you're taking, for the sanctuary city, they have don't ask, don't tell, meaning if I don't know, then I don't have to comply to anything, right? So now what happens is the federal agents, ICE and others, when they go in to catch these illegal immigrants, what the state says is, hey, you're disturbing the peace of my state. And my job is to maintain the peace. And therefore, they turn the tables and say, you're the one disturbing the peace. Now you see how the legality works? So the federal government is literally scratching its head and saying, what? I mean, you have the illegal people there. I'm trying to catch. He says, I don't know because I don't have to know. But at the same time, I'm not going to cooperate with you. I'm not going to help you. But if you force yourself and try to catch them, then you're disturbing the peace of my state, which comes under my purview to make sure that my state is at peace. So this is how they maintain the sanctuary city. Now, just for some stats to know is California has over 95% of the counties are considered sanctuary cities. That is, I think, about 97, 98 counties out of the 104 or whatever they have. The second champion of that is actually Illinois, which has over 80% of them are in 80 or 85% of them. I think about 40 to 50 counties out of 60 counties are sanctuary counties. So essentially, this is the case. And next champions are, of course, the New York and Minnesota and many others, right? And Colorado and all of them. So I'm saying, you see, the problem here is blocking people is also like supporting the crime or not. The state says per 10th Amendment, yes, I have the right to stand at the door and make sure I don't have to move. It's not required. And the federal government says, but that is blocking the justice, the path of justice. So that's what
I want to ask you a question here. I mean, and that brings about a very important element in governance and social order. Does this state and federal difference and separation actually help the cause of democracy? Because what is happening right now in America and democracies around the world is freedoms have become the fault line of democracy. Everybody is saying it's my right to do what I'm doing. I'm free to do what I'm doing. So it's a sanctuary city, you know, apart from the political gamesmanship of winning the election, which is there. Politics is vicious, if not dirty. Or is it viciously dirty? I do not know that either. But the point of the matter remains is that are we hurting the system and the process in the modern times? And is Trump helping or is he hurting by his conduct and words?
Yeah, so the issue with this is where the optics come into picture. If you look at it, in my personal opinion, harboring criminals is already an offense. We know that, right?
Yes.
That is an accomplice. So what the states are doing it is based on the 10th Amendment, they are saying if I do not identify them as criminals because of don't ask, don't tell policy, then I'm not harboring a criminal. So essentially, they're doing a legal maneuver to do something that is actually, in my opinion, completely illegal. So essentially, they are hoodwinking and bypassing the law, which is fundamentally bad for the country. What Trump is going to face is he's going to face two challenges. Number one is the legal challenge, because the other side, technically, in theory, they have a case in the court. They can take it to Supreme Court and they have a case to say, as per the 10th Amendment, I have the right to harbor anyone. And if you say, is it a criminal? I don't know because I didn't even identify them. So they have a case. But in reality, they are harboring people who broke the law, which is actually a crime, right? Because, like I said, immigration is not suggestions, they are
Right.
the laws of the land. So they are harboring criminals, but they're doing so in a very convoluted way in a legal manner. So Trump is going to have the legal battle. And second, if anything goes wrong, now because they are like the non-cooperation movement, they're going to block the doorway, block everything. And if the ICE as much as touches them and pushes them, that comes under assault. So essentially, they will start having the issue of you're assaulting the states now. You're infringing on their rights, right? I think he has a tough battle with the optics. So ICE and anything else that Trump is doing, what he's doing is not incorrect. In fact, that is legally correct, morally correct, ethically correct, but in every other aspect from the standing in court versus the optics, that is going to be a real uphill battle.
So
So
this
I
is
think
the
that is
this
where it's going to
so
fail
this is the actual battle of perception.
because people don't care about the rules and laws. See, all the things that I explained today
Yeah.
just now about how the laws, the 10th Amendment, how many people actually look at that?
That.
Almost nobody. And nobody is going to go to court and listen to the lawyer say that. It is not that argument. People are emotional. For them, what they see is what they feel, right? So they do not want
No,
to see
no, no.
something that
No, no,
appears.
no. It is the other way around. They see what they feel or they want to see.
Probably, yes. But I'm saying in the optics battle
Yeah.
is where Trump is going to lose. But if somebody were to actually get down to the actual numbers and say what are the exact actions, he did not do anything illegal. I can tell you that. But he is, like I said, all the law enforcement agencies, they work on the borders of the human rights and the criminals. So there is a potential chance that there is a slippage, which kind of happened in Minnesota. The issue is now, I think the Democrats will say, I got an opportunity, right? I'm saying there is a possibility of a political game, and the optics. I personally think this is an extremely difficult battle for Trump. I don't know which way it will go, but it's a very delicate battle. They're walking on a very thin line, and each side is looking very carefully to make sure any one side has to make one mistake. Particularly the eyes of the Trump, they're waiting for that one mistake to happen.
Yeah.
I think
As the saying goes, the enemies have to make hit only once. As law protectors, optics issue, ICE has to make sure that no innocent dies. That is a terrible optics, and this is a dangerous part of democracy. You
the
and I.
thin line, right?
Here is a
Right, and
question.
criminals, the thin
Yeah.
line. So
Here is a question that I want to ask you as an Indian American. We both are. Now, we are caught in a dilemma. 80% of the Indians are Democrats. They vote in, they live in blue states, you and I included. We live in blue states, Massachusetts, California, Washington, New York, you name it. We live in this one, we are Democrats. Where does our loyalty lie? Where does our benefit lie? Curbing the illegality of the process or standing for the illegality of the purpose?
no, actually, there is the issue, right? The problem we have is while the Democrats really act like as if the immigration laws are more like suggestions that one may really want to follow or not follow depending on their mood. So they are okay with everybody and anybody. Now, Indians have spent a substantial amount of time standing in the queue to get their legal citizenship. Essentially, when everybody breaks the law and they just flood in, then what are we doing in the queue, right? The problem with the Republican side is, again, there are fringe elements in Republicans, just like Democrats have wokes and other hypocrites. Republicans also have a bunch of racists and they have religious nuts. The problem with them is that they do not want any immigration. Or the more racist view is basically they want only the people from Europe and that's about it. And not too long ago, they actually had laws like that, like the Asian Exclusion Act. So the for Indians, the issue is on one side we have people who say that anybody will do. I don't care about the law. In fact, they're the first people to break the law and also talk the most about how everybody else need to follow the law because they're actually breaking the law and they don't care about the law. On the other side, they don't want any immigrants except from European countries, probably, right? So we are kind of stuck between these two ends. Where do we belong? Inherently, Hindus are a dharmic society and a dharmic thinkers. We don't belong to any of these black and whites, the monochromatic Abrahamic system. We do not think in terms of the black and white. We do not think in terms of just a left wing or the right wing, conservative, liberal. Those definitions don't apply to us. And we have the same problem here. And I would say in America, 45% of independents also have the same problem. They don't like the Democrats saying that everybody is okay, and they don't like the Republicans saying that nobody is okay, right? So that is where we are kind of stuck. Currently, if you look at it from Indian perspective, uh, the reason they are leaning more towards Democrats is because they are saying everybody is okay, in which I'm also there in it. Even though we don't like the idea that they're breaking the law. I mean, we are talking about how that is wrong. But at the same time, imagine one side saying that I don't want anyone here. Well, then we are excluded in that.
Right.
So quite naturally, we'll say, wait, that is the other extreme view, which is not even correct. That is fundamentally un-American, right? So that is what is pushing everyone to this side. I think if Republicans can fix this idea and make sure things are running properly and legally, as opposed to let the racist heads, there are some xenophobic and racist people at the top of the line. If they can curb them, it will look beautiful. I think a lot of people will shift this side. Otherwise, we are definitely safer on the Democrat side because they let
Knowing
everyone.
full well, here is the tragedy actually. If thinking dispassionately and thinking logically, thinking rationally, which are tough things to do in their own right, because we are all emotional people. Democrats are a total sellout to everything that is anti-Hindu and anti-Indian. They are a total sellout. Even the candidates for Democratic Party, they are party loyalists. I noticed one thing in Republicans like BJP and RSS, there are no loyalists. We are all
Yes.
principled people. We stand in the terms of should
But
or whatever.
but
Here,
Vibhuti ji, I
huh,
just want to bring one important point because you
please.
brought this up about the loyalists and Democrats. Is
Yeah,
we have to acknowledge the fact that earlier, like I said, in practicality, because they allow everyone, in fact, they are just flouting the laws as if
yeah,
immigration laws don't
yeah,
exist.
yeah.
Technically, you are at least allowed to live here. That is the reason here Indians gravitated towards Democrats.
Correct, correct, correct.
Secondly, we have to keep in mind that all the senator or all the congressmen, any Indian congressman who was elected up till now, all of them came from the Democratic Party.
Yes.
I'm saying there is a correction that needs to be done on Republican Party as well. See, we cannot talk about these
I'm
rules
I'm
while
I'm
ignoring the
interrupting
fundamental
you.
fact that
I'm
whoever
interrupting
has
you.
come.
Yes, I'm interrupting you to say this particular thing. You know that massive Republican Dr. Sampath Shivangi ji, he passed away uh, after establishing a medical college cardiac center in Bangalore or Mysore, one of these places. Was a very dear friend of mine, a Missouri Republican, total red state guy, who has been to 6 Republican conventions. He liked me. And he said, it's good to see New York Republicans like you coming up. I said, Doc, you know, I'm very blunt about certain things. I said, Doc, what has the Republican Party done for you? You have donated lots of money. You are in many White House committees where you go every month for meetings and you influence people. You have been to White House and everything else. But what did the Republican Party do for you as an Indian? And I said to him exactly what you said, that look at the Democrats. They have made sure there are 5 or 6 Indians are in the Congress representing Democratic Party, right? What does an average Joe think, average Indian think? Democratic Party gave our guy a congressional seat, Republicans don't. Tragedy? Republicans, red states, there are very few Indians living in those states. Very few. With most of the jobs, IT jobs and everything else is in blue states.
One point I just want to intervene at this point is Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yeah. Look
If
at the way
he's
he's hounded.
struggling to come up, I mean, if he's struggling, he's a very competent candidate, right?
Yeah.
So we can't even have one person who is highly educated, businessman, very competent, very articulate. If there is no room for even Vivek Ramaswamy, who is very patriotic, I mean, he has been the
Yeah.
presidential candidate. If there is no room for him, it is giving a very, very wrong signal.
In that case, you and I don't matter.
Yeah.
If Vivek Swami Ramaswamy doesn't matter because Ann Coulter and others say he's a Hindu and the fanatic Republicans say that, oh, he doesn't belong in our place, then sorry, it's goodbye. That's the
That is where,
challenge.
yes,
That's where the important part is. I told Sampath and I want to add here, this is exactly the point. Ki Sampath if you can convince your Republican Party of your state that I have got a good guy in New York, namely me, I'm willing to move to Missouri to be your Republican congressional candidate. And if you bring in Indians as the Republican Congress people in the Congress, you might have people begin to look at you differently. So there is a flaw in Republican Party. I totally understand that. But
it's
I
a
want
very
to come
serious
back.
flaw. It's a
Very,
deep and serious
very
flaw.
serious flaw. Yeah. I want to come back to another very important issue, which is capturing global imagination. This is part of the process of Trump will help Trump or he will Trump himself. Tariff and de-dollarization. This is a conversation where experts, non-experts, and everybody is a geopolitical thinker on these issues. So I have a gripe with that part. About this entire thing about tariff, I have said it right from the beginning that it is a tool of negotiation. What has happened? Somebody asked me, will you take your words back? I said, no, I will not. Because Trump is using the weapon wrongly. Now he's weaponizing tariffs, which is wrong. That's where I draw my line.
Yes.
And which is what is leading to de-dollarization element gets accelerated. And my
Correct.
thought process is that entire de-dollarization is the hatred towards America, that it manages 90% of the global trade payment settlement mechanisms and also does my asset seizure and sanctions. So it is annoying a whole lot of countries around the world. And I have said this many times in various conversations that people are now looking at alternate payment settlement systems, alternate transfer of money systems, and alternate trade settlement systems, which is what is happening thanks to geniuses like you who work in technology, and is technology aided. Tell me if I'm wrong. And how must Trump go about it, knowing full well that he's still using the 19th century technology of my right, jiski lathi uski bhais.
Yes. So
Tell
there
me.
are a few issues. The first, actually, I wanted to say 2 points, and you already mentioned one of them,
Okay.
is weaponizing the trade.
Yeah.
And when you weaponize the trade, that is so fundamentally wrong. It is in our parlance, right? It's like the Kshatriya Dharma stepping into the Vaishya Dharma.
Hmm.
It is the king who is meddling in the affairs of what a businessman should do. So money is extremely important, and that cannot work on threats, and it cannot work on the kind of sanctions and things like that. People, they want their money to be secure. What's happening with tariff is, besides using that as a the trade as a weapon, which is fundamentally wrong, and that's going to backfire. What's happening with the tariff is, why are people purchasing more from outside? It's because of only two reasons. Number one is, either we don't produce the same product, or somebody else is producing the product at a much cheaper price and more efficiently, right? The only two reasons why import it. When you put a tariff on it, in some sense, if you look from the actual numbers, it is actually like a socialism. It is not capitalism. Capitalism is a free trade market. So tariff is actually a socialistic idea, wherein you increase the barrier in a way so that you can support your own economy. Then that makes it less competitive, right? So that is fundamentally not a free market economy anymore. So quite paradoxically, the most capitalistic system that we are trying to bring here is using the most socialistic tool. So there are only two ways to do it: either tariff, or second one is have the quota, like you cannot import anything more than a certain amount. In either case, it is a socialistic system, and we are going to kill the competition, right? Now, why is this happening? Unless, I mean, tariff can work temporarily. So because it is a shock, nobody anticipated, and suddenly impose so much tariff. So initially, the government is going to see a massive revenue, but the market is going to readjust itself on how much they're going to import and export, and this benefit is going to go away. And before it goes away, America has to ramp up on its manufacturing and catch up. If it does not do that, then it is like they're living off of the free dose of the tariff, right? If it doesn't do that, then we lose the competitive edge. That's the only effect it's going to have. Now, how do we ramp this up? I know Trump is trying to bring all the manufacturing back, and that is not an overnight job. This
Yeah.
manufacturing went away over the decades.
Right.
So ramping it up is actually a manpower that you're generating, the specialized skill set, and that is going to take at least 5 to 8 years, at the minimum 5 years, and on an average about 8 years, which means this has to be done very gradually and slowly. Any kind of a shock to the market will have a very adverse effect. So I think this is not going to be good. It might look very good initially, because when you suddenly impose tariff, people have to readjust to where to find new markets. And in the meantime, they will pay the tariff. You will see a lot of revenue. So the first year or two, you're going to show that you have a lot of money that you have collected. But the truth is that is not sustainable. So one of the issues that USA has for ramping up the manufacturing, the reality is not just the manpower, the reality is the regulations. So Trump himself has said that for every one regulation, I'm removing 10 regulations. But these things are a 50 to 60-year-old system that has been built up. Unless Trump can remove for every one new regulation, if he can remove 100 regulations, then there is a possibility of actually ramping things up. 10 regulations, I don't think actually cuts it. And he's not in a position right now to cut 100 regulations for every one new regulation, because there's a lot of opposition already. It's almost like he's trying to move the entire ship and turning it suddenly. The ship is going to break. So Trump is trying to accomplish a lot in his few years, and it is going to have a radically negative effect because of that. That is about the tariff. The de-dollarization, we'll just go with some numbers, is, see, why does the dollar is stable? Is because the world holds it as the reserve currency. In 2000, that number is about 72%. 72% world reserve currency is dollar. Today, it has come down to 56.9%. So it has dropped by 16%. If you look carefully, the biggest threat to that reserve is actually euros, which has remained steady about 20% throughout for the last 20-25 years, right? But what is alarming this time was a couple of things. One, in 2025 saw the biggest drop in the dollar reserves of almost 2%. And number two, we see that The I mean, renminbi, I think, went up by about 2 to 4%, but all the other currencies put together went up by over 10%, which means the trade among other nations has increased, and they're not using dollar. And very often people use the word the foreign exchange volume and things like that, but those are not important. What we need to care about is foreign exchange volume is more about pegging everything to a dollar and doing it through the dollar. Let's say if I want the euro to come to rupees, the euro goes to dollar and the conversion from dollar to rupees, something like that. So everything is counted in dollar. But the world is increasing their gold reserves. So the way they peg it to dollar, one fine day they can peg it to a gold or any other stable currency, right? Most likely gold. As a currency, the only threat I see is not from the BRICS currency. I don't think that's going to work out. Euro is the other one. But more importantly, it can go back to being the gold standard. And countries are stocking up gold. You have seen that everybody is taking the gold back. Now the 56%, I don't know at what point, I mean, that's the economists can look at it, but about 50 or somewhere around that is when the world will say that today, when America prints $1 trillion, then obviously, let's say America has given $1 trillion to the world and it printed an additional $1 trillion, then there is a devaluation to half, right? But the world does all the churning and they do all the adjustments to make sure the dollar maintains its power because they have a lot of the money in the reserves. So if the dollar devalues, then they lost money and nobody wants to lose money. But as the reserves go down, they are a little bit okay for the dollar to devalue. And when that happens, there is going to be an inflation. This is going to be feeding into itself. It's like a slippery slope. So once this starts, it's not linear. It can accelerate very fast. I don't see that happening immediately, but if and when that happens, it can accelerate really rapidly and we can have a sudden surge of the inflation. Now, this is where Trump is trying to play a gamble. There are two ways of doing it. Either business deal with everyone and get everything in online. But unfortunately, threatening the countries, imposing tariffs and things like that, people are concerned about whether their money is safe. And when somebody says my money is not safe, you're a banker, I can tell you that if anyone thinks that my money is not safe, it is absolutely important. It is the most important. Money always speaks the truth. Then they will take the money out of your bank.
That's why it is called run on the bank.
Yes, that is how the de-dollarization,
Yeah.
it can accelerate with these tariffs and threats, and many of these things can accelerate it. This is more like a gamble that is happening. When you threaten and then try to bring about a new order, the new order better work much superior to the previous one. And it should work good for everybody, not just for US.
You know,
If it
Scott
doesn't,
Bessent, yeah,
world will exit from the dollar.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent made a statement several months ago, actually. Of course, it's the first term now. First term, 1 year is over of the Trump administration, but somewhere around third or fourth month, he had made a statement that I have been given one mandate by President, and my mandate is reduce the deficit and not hurt the dollar. Do you think it is an unrealistic CEO goal given to you if you were Lutnick, or is it possible? Your thoughts?
So it is, it is very tricky, right? This also involves, like for the Federal Reserve right now, the issue that we are seeing, the independence of the Federal Reserve is also very important to maintain some of these things. When he's talking about reducing the interest rates, that can have a transient effect of stabilizing the dollar for now. But in the long run, obviously the deficit and other things are going to increase. It's not going to be good in the longer run. Those are more like band-aid measures. Because what I think is Trump is trying to do a very careful maneuver around this, have a temporary fix so that people are not alarmed. There's no inflation, there's no unemployment. All these things can be controlled for now because he anticipates that in the coming few months or year, things will get better. So he wants this to be the bridging one. But the Federal Reserve doesn't believe so. Now, with the treasury, is it possible? No, it is. It is not exactly possible because other countries are also trying to protect their own currency and their own money, right? So treasury can do that if the government does not actually threaten and do other tariffs and other actions. If it doesn't use trade as a weapon, see, a fair trade is something that most countries can agree with. But when you use trade as a weapon, then it ceases being a trade. When it ceases being a trade, then dollar becomes a weapon rather than a reserve. I think Treasury Secretary is going to have a very tough time because the policies, if you're talking, he's going to talk about the policies and the monetary policy and the money, not about politics. So if the dollar is turned into a weapon, then obviously other countries, there's very little leeway the Treasury Secretary will have because other countries are not going to take dollar as a weapon. And especially with the sanctions and of course the tariffs. Sanctions is the other aspect of it because that is like saying I'm using it as a weapon, clearly, right?
Yeah,
So
here
I
is.
think all of that is defies the free trade market and capitalism that we say we profess to, but all of these actually defy that. If we let the trade be the trade and not use them as a weapon, I think we have a better shot at it. Separate the politics, like in Bharat, we talk about the Kshatriya Dharma and the Vaishya Dharma. Don't let them mingle with each other because they'll ruin each other. I
But
think
boss, but there is one thing I was told during one of my growing up years that exact words that Lakshmi और सरस्वती का सहवास नहीं होता है,
नहीं होता है.
नहीं होता है. लेकिन if you were not educated well, you won't get money either. Think about it from that perspective. Yes, inventions, innovators, entrepreneurs don't go to an MBA school. They don't have to. I mean, I remember during my MBA days when I read the line, and I've never forgotten that, and I quote about it, that is truly ironical that the world's largest inventions, most curious inventions, largest inventions, successful enterprises, philanthropies, they were all started by people who had received least formal education. Important part, least formal education. So the question here is, Lakshmi or Saraswati का सहवास हो सकता है, but
Uh, I just
activities को separate करना पड़ेगा. Don't let
no, no, no,
go
one
them go.
second.
Yeah,
We
go
need
ahead.
to understand that concept correctly is that, see, up to a certain threshold, it is about the livelihood. In that livelihood, Lakshmi and Saraswati always live together.
Yeah.
But after a certain point, you come to the point of inflection where it becomes wielding the power on others. That is when they separate. So the initial portion that you talked about, Lakshmi and Saraswati being together, has to be below the threshold where you're using it for your own livelihood.
I agree.
But the inflection point where you start influencing others and get into somebody else's karma
Yeah.
is when they take their paths. And if
That
they
is
don't,
why that
then they
is why I always say that I always say you may remember me saying this, that there is a very thin line that divides the difference between arrogance and confidence, legal, illegal, criminal or not criminal. Think about it. Isab, I wanted to ask you something very important here, and I want to end the show with this conversation part. Thank you very much for joining. Whether Trump will, only Trump can help Trump, and Trump, or he will Trump himself. There is one thing important here. Trump, you can't change.
yes,
He is the way he is. That's why he won the election the third time, even though he lost the second time. Won the third time. I think he will do himself the biggest favor if he controls his deputies. Don't become me and don't talk like me. The problem here is entire Trump cabinet, other than a few here and there, everybody is behaving like Trump, using words like Trump. Like all the Treasury Secretary and others, they're threatening the world, right? That's why
yes,
Lutnick got laughed at when he said, "Oh, India did a trade with the EU, and we are the ones who are fighting Ukraine war." Now you look stupid. So Trump has to do that thing very quickly, immediately. Your policy prescriptions are correct. You are hitting at the issues that are correct, but you are doing it wrongly. and your deputies are not helping you by acting like Trump. So you have to tell your deputies, don't be me, leave me alone. this, with these thoughts, I am closing my conversation with you today. If you want to add something in 30 seconds, you have the floor.
Yes, one quick note is I think we have spoken this in the past too. Is diplomacy is a way of is the art of telling a person to go to hell in such a way that they will look forward to the trip.
Yes.
Somehow, Trump doesn't have that right now. He's not diplomatic,
Yeah.
and the people that he has picked also do not seem to have that. So while he has a very serious issue with the optics, others aren't helping it out. They are actually feeding into it to make the
Yeah.
optics look bad.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mohanji. And I always say it is our Hindu dharma that we say Satyameva Jayate. And for the truth to triumph, we have to stand for it. We have to stand up for it and be counted. Thank you very much for joining today.
Namaste.
Viewers, glad you are back. And I am back too. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Namaste.